The night he left me, I wasn't wearing some glamorous dress. I wasn't holding champagne. I was holding the dessert menu, trying to decide between tiramisu or crème brûlée. I had walked in expecting a celebration, not a farewell. We had a reservation at our favorite Italian restaurant, the one where the waiter always remembered Daniel's wine preference. And mine too. The low lighting made every table feel like its own little island. The air was warm with garlic and basil, the kind of smell that made you think of comfort and home. I thought I knew every expression Daniel had. The grin when he got a promotion, the furrowed brow when he pretended to read the wine list, but was really eavesdropping. Even the smirk that meant, "I'm about to tell a bad joke, brace yourself." But the face he wore that night, that was a face I had never seen. He kept glancing toward the door instead of at me. His fingers tapped an uneven rhythm on the tablecloth. Outside, rain streaked the windows in silver lines, each drop a tiny drumbeat counting down to something I couldn't name yet. I laughed lightly, trying to break the tension. "You look like you're waiting for someone else to join us." His eyes flicked back to mine, but they didn't soften. "Sarah," he began, his voice low. "Too careful. There's something we need to talk about." I smiled, because my brain still thought it was a toast, an anniversary thing, maybe even a proposal. Instead, he set his fork down, like it weighed 50 pounds. "I've been offered a position overseas," he said. "And I'm taking it, with Valeria." I blinked, not understanding the words in that order. "Who's Valeria?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "The woman I'm in love with." The words didn't just hurt. They sliced clean, no build-up. No regret, just a surgical strike through the middle of my life. By the time dessert arrived, an untouched tiramisu, I knew I didn't have an apartment anymore. My lease had ended last month. We'd decided to move in together, into his condo. My half of the savings, already tied up in a joint investment, for his business. And apparently Valeria's family had connections that would change everything for him. I remember the waiter's smile faltering as he set down the plate. I remember my hands going cold, even though the restaurant was warm. By the time the bill came, I wasn't just single. I was homeless, broke, and according to Daniel, free to start fresh. If you're new here, welcome to Revenge Repaid, where I share real stories of heartbreak, betrayal, and the kind of payback you never see coming. My name's Sarah Lawson. I've been a nurse for almost 10 years. I've held strangers' hands as they took their last breaths. I've fought to bring others back from the edge. Resilience had always been my mantra at work. But that night, in that restaurant, I realized I had no clue how to use it on myself. I didn't go back to Daniel's condo. I couldn't face the sight of my life in boxes. The bed we'd shared now belongs to someone else. Instead, I went to my godmother Miriam's bungalow, a tiny place with mismatched curtains and a front porch that always smelled faintly of rosemary and laundry soap. She didn't ask questions when I showed up soaked and shaking. She just pressed a mug of tea into my hands and said, "You'll be fine. You've always been fine." But it felt like a foreign country I didn't have a passport for. My savings were gone. My lease was gone. And my pride had taken a direct hit. I spent the next 2 days scrolling job listings between hospital shifts, feeling like I was swimming in molasses. Every listing wanted more experience, more certifications, or offered so little pay it wouldn't even cover rent. Each time my phone lit up, I half hoped it was Daniel calling to take it all back, and hated myself for even wanting that. On the third night, Miriam slid a piece of paper across the kitchen table. "Nina called," she said. "She heard about, well, everything. She says there's a private care position. Live in, pay 3 times what you make now." I stared at the neat handwriting. "Too good to be true," I muttered. Miriam shrugged with a knowing little smile. "Maybe, but the patient's some kind of tech big shot. Apparently nobody lasts more than a month." "Why?" I asked. "Word is he's difficult." She smirked. "You'll see if you take it." I sat back, letting the idea settle in my chest. My apartment was gone. My money almost gone. Staying here long-term would make me feel like I'd never stopped falling. Maybe too good to be true was exactly what I needed. Before I tell you what happened when I first met him, the man everyone warned me about, make sure you're subscribed to Revenge Repaid so you don't miss how this story ends. Because trust me, the ending wasn't just unexpected. It was impossible to forget. The next afternoon, I was standing in front of a set of gates so tall, they could have kept the sun out if they wanted to. The Cross Estate, the security guard called it, checking my name off a list. Inside, the drive wound upward between manicured hedges, until the house appeared. All glass, steel, angles sharp enough to cut the sky. The kind of place that didn't just say money. It said, "You don't belong here, unless I say you do." I wasn't meeting the patient yet. First came the evaluation, as the estate manager Clarissa called it. She had a posture like someone born standing at attention, and eyes that took in more than she let on. She glanced at my resume once, asked 4 clipped questions, then folded her hands. "You'll have a suite on the 2nd floor. Meals provided. No visitors. Your patient's condition is complicated. Medical knowledge required. Discretion non-negotiable." I nodded, pretending the zeros on the salary line hadn't made me dizzy. "And Sarah," she added, pausing just long enough to make my stomach drop. "If you last longer than 2 weeks, you'll be the first in a very long time." By that night, I'd signed the contract. And by the end of the week, I'd find out exactly why everyone else had walked away. The first time I saw him, he wasn't facing me. Afternoon light spilled into a vast room, so bright the walls seemed to glow. Beyond the glass stretched the skyline, the kind of view only the highest floors and highest bank accounts could buy. He sat in the corner, back to me, shoulders squared, not with strength but with stubbornness. The chair he occupied wasn't just any chair, sleek, black, high-backed, but the footrests gave it away. A wheelchair, polished to a shine, almost like it was meant to be part of the decor. Clarissa stood beside me, clipboard pressed to her chest. "You're early," she said, voice clipped but not unkind. I didn't want to be late. Her gaze didn't soften. "Follow me." The hallway was long and muffled. Abstract paintings lined the walls. Glass cases full of artifacts I didn't recognize. Everything spotless, but not warm. Not lived in, like a museum you tiptoe through. Clarissa didn't knock. 2 sharp raps. Then she pushed the doors open. Adrian Cross. That was the name on my contract. The name whispered with the warning. Nobody lasts. He didn't turn at the sound of the door. His hands rested on the armrests, fingers tapping a rhythm that didn't match the antique clock ticking in the corner. "Mr. Cross," Clarissa said crisply. "Your new caretaker, Sarah Lawson." There was a pause. Not long, but long enough for me to feel it. Then slowly he pivoted the chair toward me. I'd been expecting someone older. Gray hair. Decades worn by contracts and boardrooms. But no, he was younger than I imagined. Mid-30s. A sharp jawline, dark hair softening into waves. Eyes sharp, measuring. "So," he said finally, "you're the new one." "I suppose I am," I replied, meeting his gaze. His eyes cut to Clarissa, sharp as a blade. "What's the bet this time?" he asked. "A week? 10 days?" "I'm not here to place bets," I said. "I'm here to do my job." His head tilted. The faintest smirk ghosted his mouth. "And what exactly do you think your job is?" "Medication, physical therapy, monitoring your vitals, supporting rehabilitation." He leaned back slightly. "You forgot the part where you pretend to care," while secretly wondering why I bother trying. "If you're expecting pity," I said without flinching, "you hired the wrong person." Something flickered in his face. "Irritation, maybe, or interest." "Good," he said finally. "Pity is useless." That first day, we spoke only when necessary. His answers were clipped, his eyes often drifting back to the window, like he was watching for something far away. By the 3rd night, things shifted. I found him in the gym, though it looked more like a rehabilitation suite. Steel bars, machines built for therapy. He was gripping the bars, arms taut, sweat dampening his hairline. He was standing, not perfectly, but upright enough that I could see the strain in his legs. "You're stronger than you want people to believe," I said quietly. "Why are you hiding it?" He didn't look at me, because the minute people see improvement, they expect miracles, and when you don't deliver, they walk away. "If you let me help, I won't tell anyone," I said. "We can keep it between us." That got his attention. His head turned slowly, eyes narrowing, testing me. "Why?" "Because I know what it's like," I whispered. "To have your future ripped away, and be expected to smile through it." He studied me, then lowered himself back into the chair. "Fine, but we do it my way." That became our rhythm. Mornings, meds, stretches, Clarissa's sharp footsteps checking in. Afternoons, he disappeared into his study or spent hours on the phone. Evenings, I'd find him in the gym, spotting him at the bars, adjusting his stance, him nodding or grunting in response. Over time, cracks appeared in his armor. He admitted he used to row, not casually, competitively, that the accident putting him in the chair wasn't an accident at all. I told him I used to run half marathons until an injury ended it. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it wasn't silence either. On the 5th morning, I heard a new voice, polished, self-assured, the kind of voice that carried power without raising volume. I followed it to the sitting room. Adrian was there, with his cousin Lucas Cross. "You've stalled me for weeks," Lucas said. "Valeria's ready. Once the patent's transferred to the shell company, Kane Robotics takes over. Clean exit. Big payout. Valeria." My stomach nodded. There was only one Valeria I knew. Daniel's Valeria. I froze in the doorway, heart pounding. Adrian's voice cut back. "Cool. You make it sound like theft is a business strategy." Lucas smirked. "Only if you get caught." I slipped away before they noticed me, mind spinning. That night I told Adrian everything. How Daniel had left me for Valeria. How her family had connections in the tech world. His reaction was sharp, focused. The same look he had when gripping the parallel bars. By morning, he was at my door, a folder clutched under his arm. "You were right," he said. "Lucas and Valeria are trying to take my company. There's no one else in this house I can trust, except you." I didn't realize it then, but the job had already changed. It wasn't about care plans or therapy anymore. It was about strategy, loyalty, survival. The folder Adrian handed me was heavier than it looked. Not just physically, but with the weight of his trust. Maybe the first crack in the wall he'd built around himself. Inside were contracts, email printouts, financial statements, the kind of paperwork that made my head ache just looking at it. With every page I turned, my heartbeat quickened. This wasn't business as usual. This was betrayal in ink. It was sabotage. Lucas wasn't simply trying to wrest control of Adrian's company. He was slowly dismantling it from the inside. And Valeria, her name kept appearing in the correspondence. Always in the background. Always connected to someone who just happened to be moving money. Or shifting resources. It was like she was weaving the web. Each strand placed exactly where it would cause the most damage. I closed the folder and looked up at Adrian. "This is worse than I thought." His jaw tightened. "It's deliberate. They think I'm too distracted. Or too broken. To fight back. Then they've clearly never met the man I've seen in that gym," I said. He gave me a faint, humorless smile. "Flattery won't make this easier." "I'm not flattering you," I replied. "I'm telling you, if you want to win this, you can't do it alone." From that day forward, evenings in the gym became strategy sessions. While he practiced standing, I'd read him updates on court filings or company news. While I adjusted the resistance bands, he'd dictate notes for me to type up later. I learned more about Kane Robotics than I ever cared to know. How the patents Adrian held were worth more than the rest of the company combined. How Lucas had been quietly lobbying board members. How Valeria had inserted herself into meetings she had no right to attend. Every piece of it left a sour weight in my chest. At night, alone in my suite, I'd sit by the window and watch the estate's gates glint under the security lights. Somewhere out there, Daniel and Valeria were probably congratulating themselves. I wondered if they had any idea I was here, in the one place that could unravel everything they'd built together. One evening, during a break between sets of exercises, Adrian asked, "Why are you still here?" It caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "You've been here longer than most. Longer than anyone, actually. Everyone else leaves by now. Frustrated, fed up, or bought out." I frowned. "Bought out?" He nodded, gripping the parallel bars. "Lucas has a habit of offering staff early exit bonuses. They take the money, disappear, and leave me scrambling for replacements." I thought back to Miriam's warning. How nobody lasted more than a month. "And you think that's going to happen to me?" "I think Lucas will try," he said. "But I also think you're not the kind of person who's easily moved." "You'd be right," I said quietly. The first direct attack came 2 days later. Clarissa intercepted a call meant for me. An anonymous tip, suggesting Adrian had been hiding medical complications from me. It wasn't just about Adrian. It was about making me doubt myself, doubt my judgment, and risk everything I'd built. When I told Adrian, he barely blinked. Classic Lucas, create doubt, watch it spread. "Then he doesn't know me very well," I said. "Doubt only makes me dig deeper." As the days passed, I started to notice subtle shifts in Adrian. He spoke more during meals. He asked questions about my day, about my work at the hospital before I came here. Sometimes when we were going over documents, I'd catch him studying me, as if trying to figure out whether I was real, whether I was actually in this for him, not just the paycheck. And maybe, I realized I was. It wasn't about the job anymore. It was about proving something. To Daniel, to Valeria, to Lucas, to myself. One rainy afternoon, we got our break. A misfiled email in the company server, likely an oversight by one of Lucas's allies, revealed that a key patent transfer was scheduled to finalize in just under 2 weeks. If that happened, Kane Robotics would own the technology Adrian had spent years developing. Lucas would be in control. Adrian stared at the document, then looked at me. We need to move now. We worked through the night. Adrian drafted statements for the board. I compiled evidence from the folder and everything we'd gathered since. I called in a favor from an old friend, a corporate lawyer. She agreed to review the documents and discreetly prepare filings. When the first light crept through the windows, our strategy was ready. But with each step forward, the resistance grew stronger. Anonymous calls, tampered documents. At one point, the security system glitched, locking me out of the main house for nearly an hour, until Clarissa manually overrode it. Through it all, Adrian stayed steady, more focused than I'd ever seen him. And when fatigue threatened to slow him, I reminded him of the stakes. Lucas is betting you'll fold, I said one evening, as we reviewed the final presentation. He's counting on you to be the man he's been telling everyone you are. The man who's given up. And you? Adrian asked, eyes steady on mine. I'm betting on the man who's been fighting in that gym every night since I got here. The board meeting was set for a Tuesday. By the night before, we were armed with proof. Email chains tying Lucas directly to Kane Robotics. Corporate registration documents linking a shell company to Valeria's father's holding group. Bank transfers so bold. They looked like they were daring someone to notice. Enough proof not only to block the takeover, but to ensure Lucas would never sit in a Cross Innovations boardroom again. That night, while we reviewed the last set of documents in Adrian's study, a question rose to my lips, one that had been building for weeks. Why me? I asked quietly. He didn't look up at first, just underlined a line in one of the contracts. What do you mean? You've had dozens of caretakers before me. Clarissa told me nobody lasts. You could have chosen anyone, but you chose me. He set the pen down slowly. His gaze shifted fully to me. Because Lucas recommended you. The words hit like a slap. Lucas? Yes, he said you had the credentials. The discretion. That you were the right fit. His mouth twisted. At the time I thought he was trying to help. Now I know better. My pulse thudded in my ears. I saw it all at once. Valeria. Lucas. My name on a list. The perfect candidate. Not to succeed, but to fail. I wasn't brought here to help Adrian recover. I was brought here to be one more in a long line of ineffective caretakers. To frustrate him, distract him, maybe even push him to give up the fight entirely. I was the setup, but they hadn't counted on me staying. The next morning, Adrian stepped out of his suite in a midnight blue suit. Cane in one hand, folder in the other, his posture straighter than I'd ever seen. When the car dropped us at Cross Innovations headquarters, the chrome and glass facade reflected the gray morning sky. Inside, the boardroom was a theater of surprise. Conversations halted mid-sentence as Adrian walked in. Walked, without his wheelchair. Lucas sat at the head of the table. His confident half-smile faltered. To his right, Valeria. Slate gray suit, polished as always. And next to her, Daniel. My breath caught, though I didn't let it show. Adrian didn't take the far end of the table. He walked directly to Lucas. Stopped, and in a calm, even voice, he said, "This meeting is now under my authority, and I'll begin with this." He laid out each document with slow, precise movements. Emails, corporate records, bank statements, cards on a table, in a game he already knew he'd won. Heads bent forward. Pages passed from hand to hand. Murmurs spread like ripples in water. "This," Adrian said evenly, "is proof my cousin conspired with Kane Robotics. He tried to transfer our patents to a shell company without board approval. The evidence shows the betrayal of duty, and a clear violation of the rules." Lucas's mouth pressed into a hard line. "You can't prove intent." Adrian's reply was calm. "Almost bored. I don't have to. The breach is clear." The general counsel rose. "Mr. Cross, do you wish to call for a vote of no confidence?" "I do," Adrian said. The vote came swift. Every hand rose. In a heartbeat, Lucas was finished, stripped of power in less time than it took to announce it. Valeria stood. Her voice is low, venom-laced. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Adrian didn't flinch. "Oh, I do. A man willing to betray his family, and a woman who hides weakness behind manipulation. Then slowly, he looked at me, and a caretaker, who turned out to be the reason I'm standing here at all. The room went still. Daniel's eyes dropped to the table. The boardroom emptied like a tide pulling back from shore, leaving only Adrian and me. "You stayed," he said simply. "Leaving you here by yourself didn't feel right." Something softened in his expression. Not a smile exactly, but close. Life at the estate changed after that. The air no longer heavy. The staff moved without that quiet edge of fear. Even Adrian left the curtains open longer, letting in the afternoon light. His recovery was still a grind. Mornings when his balance wavered, days when his legs shook after therapy. But he stopped hiding his progress, and I stopped measuring the distance between the life I imagined and the one unfolding in front of me. One evening I found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, trying to slice peppers with the kind of focus most people reserve for surgery. "That's either dinner or a crime scene," I teased. He glanced up with mock offense. "Careful, this might be the dish that secures my legacy. Or the obituary of whoever eats it," I shot back. He laughed, pushed the cutting board aside, and slipped a small box from his pocket, setting it gently between us. "You don't have to decide now," he said softly. "But I want to build something with you. Not just a company, not just this house. Something that's ours." Inside was a ring, simple, with a single deep green stone. I slipped it on, feeling its weight. "This doesn't mean yes," I said quietly. "It doesn't have to," he replied. "It just means you're still here." We let time take its own shape. No rush. Healing had its own rhythm. No headlines, no staged photographs. Just slow days where he walked farther than before. And quiet nights where his voice didn't feel rare anymore. By the first frost of winter, the cane was gone. On his birthday, we drove north along the coast, until the world felt wide again. Standing on the shore, wind pulling at our clothes, he asked, "Do you ever wish it had gone differently?" I thought of Daniel, of Valeria, of the woman who once walked through his gates believing she was just a caretaker. I smiled softly. "No, because if it had, I wouldn't be here." He took my hand. Not for balance, but because he wanted to. For the first time in years. I trusted where my steps were taking me, and that's how I went from being just the caretaker to the one who stood beside him when the smoke finally cleared. What I thought I wanted never came, but something truer did. I got something better, a life I earned, the kind of life that doesn't just happen. It's built, piece by piece, on the ruins of everything you thought would destroy you. So if you're sitting in your own wreckage right now, wondering if the pieces will ever make sense again, they will. And maybe, just maybe, the life you build next will be the one you were meant for all along. This is Revenge Repaid, where betrayal is just the beginning, and the ending is always yours to write. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you hit subscribe, and join me next time for another tale of heartbreak, grit, and perfectly delivered payback.